everyone, and welcome. I'm not Trevor. It's time for Adult Insights. I'm V-Muse. I'm stepping in for Trevor today, and today we have the lovely Luke Gygax with us to chat for the next hour. Thank you so much for joining us today, Luke. Really looking forward to jumping in. I have some great questions for you. And also, before we get started, we have Lauren running production as always. So big applause for Lauren on that one. And Gabe is modding for us today. When we get into having some questions, we are going to have this lovely space of time for chat to also have some questions that we will chat about. So make sure that you do your question colon all in caps, and Gabe will pull those for you, and I will let you know we're going to start answering those. And we do have an Electrum chess code for you as well, and it's Luke Gygax. No, I'm serious. It's Luke Gygax. See, it's Luke Gygax and it's Luke Gygax. So that's your Electrum chess code. And yes, I know you're probably all thinking this is different. Trevor's not here. Are we still going to do the same thing they do every single week? There will be that 42 chest giveaway, which we're going to do around the bottom half of the hour. So keep an eye out for that. I'll let you know when that started, and Gabe will get that going for you in chat. So that all that housekeeping said and done, and the lurking writer I just saw, Treavor. Clever play of names there. But now that we have all the housekeeping out of the way, Luke, seriously, so glad you could join us today. It has been an eventful year, obviously, for D&D in general, so it's great to have you join us today in chat. But we recently got to do a fun thing with you, which is actually available in the game shop right now, and that is the action figure Melf skin and feet pack, which you can see right here.
Yes,
Which is
I see him
fantastic.
walking right there. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a lot of fun having some back and forth with you, chatting about the action figure, because we had there was that old action figure from God, what was
Yes.
that?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. It
you
was
got it?
I've got it right here. You
I
can
love
take
it.
a look at it. That's the old Melf himself right there.
Melf himself.
Which
Fantastic.
yeah, which was not based on my character really at all. But it was just a cool character that I think they had of an elf, and they said, "Hey, what would be an elven character we could name?" And they're like, "How about Melf?" And they
Oh, so it was
they
like a
stuck it on there.
coincidental?
Well, they just thought, what's a character that people would recognize?
Gotcha.
That's a fun name for people because
Okay.
it rhymes with elf, right? So Melf the elf.
Yeah.
Melf the good fighter elf is what they
Melf
named
the
it.
Good Fighter Elf.
The good
I
fighter
love
elf,
it.
which is true. He was a good fighter and an
Yeah.
elf. So
There you
that's all
go.
good. And
Yeah.
my dog
So
Grogu has decided that he wanted to sleep on me for this interview.
I
So
mean, there's no complaints. I mean, heads up, everyone. There's going to be pets showing up here and there. I mean, obviously, we have
uh,
Grogu, and then my cats are right off screen right now. And those of you who watch Paint and Slay, they know these cats love to make appearances. So we'll see who joins us. But it was fun getting to chat with you about the Melf skin, because obviously you kind of went in your own direction, and
yeah,
it was still the action figure form, but we got to do some fun things with colors and everything like that. So it was nice to sort of have a freshened, re-updated sort of look to the skin.
yeah. So we didn't just kind of copy this. Well, let's take this as a basis and let's incorporate some of the colors and the looks and
Hmm.
the things that I had for my character Melf,
Yeah.
and kind of make that the idle champion version,
Yeah.
which is great. Oh, so you've got your kitty
See,
joined here too.
so
Yeah,
it's only a matter of
yeah,
time.
yep, it's happening.
Yep. We
So
got it.
yes,
We got it going. It's
he just
perfect.
he just huffed and puffed because I wasn't sitting still enough for him, so he had to
She does
reposition
that
himself.
too.
Yeah,
I like how we have spots and stripes going on too. So
yeah,
we're all set with animal prints right now.
that's
Um, so obviously our players definitely know who Melf is. Very familiar character, very familiar champion. Even played Melf for us for Idle Champions Presents for the Trials of Mount
yeah.
Tiamat. And that was, oh my gosh, that was so much fun to be able to do with you, have you kind of like surprise everyone and jump in as Melf. But when it comes to characters, are there other characters that you sort of had in your back pocket or that you've played that are sort of near and dear to you that many may not be aware of?
Well, yeah, probably the first one I ever played was Otis. Otis was a ranger, and it was like 1975, so I was very, very young. And
Okay.
my dad let me. I was probably begging to play, and so he said, "Okay, sure, you can play this character." And way back in the early days of D&D, you would bring along hirelings called man at arms with you to go into a
Right.
dungeon exploration or a even outdoor exploration, because the more people you had, the better your chances of survival, right? So you'd put those men at arms out in front, and they'd help you fight. So I was playing a man at arms, but really I was a ranger who was working for the druid in the woods, because this was a very early version of the Village of Hamlet, which was a classic adventure, the beginning of the Temple of Elemental Evil. And so the druid had asked me to pretend to be a man-at-arms, go in there and spy on the party to make sure that they were not actually servants of evil and that they were what they said they were, and we're going there to clear out the moat house from evil. So that was my guys that I went under, and soon I figured out they were a good group, and I joined them. And so I played Otis from first level all the way through the G series, which is the setting of the Hill Giant Chief, the glacial rift of the Frost Giant Jarl, and I can't remember the Fire Giant King though. I can't remember what it's called, but G3. And so I played him in as a ranger. That's great because in the olden days, any giant class, you got to add your level to any damage that you did when you hit. So,
oh god, that's awesome.
Right. So I was a 10th level ranger lord by the end of the time that I played him. So if I get at giant creatures, plus 10 every time I got to attack, and I think I got maybe 2 attacks around. So it was crazy. So I was I was a whirlwind of blades fighting. Because after the giants, of course, what's the next series that leads you into is Descent into the Depths of the Earth and the Drow. So I played all the Drow series as Otis. And then I was probably 10 years old by that time. So I played him from like 5 to 10.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I was very young. And so that was great. So I did all that play testing. And then for some reason, I don't know what it was, my dad must have been in a pretty bad mood, but I was bugging him after, I think it was after work at some days, it was after school for me. I said, Dad, let's play D&D tonight. And he's like, okay, you really want to? Yeah, I must have pestered him. And he's like, okay, I've got something to play. And so my sister Heidi joined me, and we played Melf, and she played a character named Murfles, who is, if anyone remembers a book, Pop Lollies and Belly Bones. My dad liked old words, so he had that on the shelf, and Murfles is a silly word out of that one. But anyway, it's neither here nor there. He took us into an ancient crypt that was purported to house a powerful mage who had cheated death by the name of a Sararak. And yes, so I'm 10 and my sister's 16, and he took us into the Tomb of Horrors. And I explored the Tomb of Horrors for a while. I ended up going through one of the misty portals that teleported all of my goods to the end of I didn't know where they went, but now I know because I've read it a few times. So spoiler alert. It sends it to the end of the treasure room, Sararak's treasure room. And I was naked at the beginning of the Tomb of Horrors. Well, I wasn't going to leave all my stuff, right? Come on. So I went back into the Tomb of Horrors, ill-advisedly, and crawled around through some of the tunnels and stuff, and found a 10 by 10 room with 3 levers. And I pushed the levers up. That's not a good move. Also, spoiler alert. So I dropped down a 100-foot pit, and I survived. I had 111 hit points, so I didn't die. Badly wounded, naked, at the bottom of a pit in the Tomb of Horrors, and that's the last time I ever played it. So that's the sad news. So my dad did not pull punches on that sort of stuff, even if you're a younger player. However, the silver lining of that is the next character I rolled up was Melf, and so I played Melf from about the age of 11 until about 16 is when I kind of last actively played him. Other cool characters that I played there, as I was, I would oftentimes play Melf, but my dad, when he was getting ready to make Unearthed Arcana, the supplement Unearthed Arcana, the Barbarian class needed to be tested. So he had me roll up a Barbarian. I didn't know what I was doing. He just said, take 8 6-sided dice and roll them. That's your, whatever, Constitution or Strength. I can't remember. And then like 7 and 6. So it was an alternate method of rolling up a character. And then they said, roll a 12-sided die for hit points. I rolled a 12, luckily. And so with an 18 Constitution and a 12, they get double the bonus. That was 20 hit points at first level. I was like, this is pretty cool. Yeah. So I played Queg, who was a Frusty Barbarian in the world of Greyhawk, which is up north, I think, of Radek, if I remember right, in the Flyness. And so I got to play the first Barbarian class.
That's so fun.
Yeah, so that was pretty fun. So I played him until about 3rd or 4th level. And then I don't know what happened to him. We didn't play we play tested that a bit, and Unearthed Organic
Right.
was out, so we just put that to the side and went back to playing Melf.
Hmm.
And so that was great. So those are probably the main characters that I played, and I had the great good fortune of adventuring with a lot of the early creators of the game, from
Yeah.
James M. Ward, who just recently passed away, who was Drawmage. My brother Ernie is Tensor. Just tons and tons. Obviously my dad played Morgan Kanan and Bigby. Those were his characters. So um, yeah, it was great times, and I just had, like I said, the great good fortune of kind of my home game was the
Hmm.
play test for D&D. And so when people ask me what it was like growing up in my household, it was hard for me to I was like, well, that's just normal, right? Then as an
Right.
adult, of course, you reflect on that. Well, that's pretty cool. My
Yeah.
home game was what would be introduced as canon into the world, and so I was able to create spells that I created as a player, made it into the game, like Melf's Acid Arrow and Melf's
Right.
Minute Meteors, and
Yep.
yeah, so those are
Yeah.
pretty fun.
All right, that's very cool. I love hearing the story about Otis, especially because it reminds me so much of like with my kiddos, their first characters and what they did and everything like that and how they locked into certain classes and everything like that. So it's
Yeah,
fun, hearing that this is something that, you started and it keeps going and going and going. So, I mean, they're still playing D&D to this day. Like they have
yeah.
their own game now with friends. It's fantastic.
And, I wonder, is there, someone maybe has studied this already, but does playing a certain type of character, does that help shape who you are if you start playing as a young person, or do you
Oh, it's
gravitate
interesting.
towards certain characters, which means you
Uh-huh.
have a certain type of personality? Are they
Yeah.
unrelated? I'm just curious. What's the interrelation there?
Oh, I like that because thinking about the ones that my youngest gravitates towards and the ones my oldest does, I'm like, there might be something there.
Right. And I remember
Yeah.
I played an assassin once. So this is another
Uh-huh.
character that was very short-lived, but for some reason my dad was working on an adventure in Stoink, which is
Mhm.
I can't even remember where Stoink is, but it's somewhere near Iaz, the lands of Iaz. So it's not a good place. There was lots of
Bad place.
evil in the area, and so I was playing an assassin, and I was arrested for something, and in jail. So that was the thing I had to break out, right? To figure out how to break out. So I broke out and had like 8 or 12, outlaws with me, right? So we were a little
Okay.
brigand group, and we we escaped the town. We were out in the wilderness, and we came upon a village, right? And so we
Okay.
scouted out the village and pretended to be, just travelers or whatever. And we needed food, right? And so I, we scouted out, and the guys were like, oh yeah, we should be able to, at nightfall, we can just go in and we can kill these poor these villagers or whatever, and steal all their
Uh,
stuff. And I was like, absolutely not. We're not going to kill these poor villagers. We have gold. We can buy the sheep and food it's like, I was playing a chaotic evil assassin. No, I, I couldn't do it. So I got in a fight with my own second in command because I said, no, we can't
funny.
kill these villagers.
So
So yeah, it really went against my grain to
yeah,
attack
yeah.
the defenseless villagers. So
So
yeah,
not steering into murder hobo mentality.
right. Yeah, I
Yeah.
guess. Which,
Yeah.
yeah, because again, I was probably, again, a young person, 12 or something
Hmm.
like that. So I was, that just seemed like a bad idea. I just didn't, I knew that was wrong, and I didn't want to do that. So,
Yeah. But I think
but
it's
also,
it's
playing like paladins, I don't like that either, because that's too restrictive, right?
yeah. Yeah, agreed. Honestly, paladins were like one of the least played classes for me. Like it's not one that I gravitate towards at all.
Yeah.
So actually, what class do you tend to go towards most for your
Uh,
own
I tend,
characters?
with fifth edition, it's so balanced.
Hmm.
I'm able to play lots of different things. I don't like playing rogues very much.
Okay.
And I'm not a huge fan of bards. I'm not musical personally, so it's harder for me to play the bard. I really do like playing druids. I think druids are pretty tough in fifth edition.
Hmm.
Various types of spellcasters are good.
Yeah.
Clerics can be great, and in fifth edition, I actually do like playing paladins sometimes,
Yeah,
because they remove the lawful good stricture, which was there
that's
in
true.
Advanced Dungeons and
Yeah.
Dragons.
Yeah.
And there's different paths that you can take that can be a bit less, you know, kind of restrictive, and you tend to be cookie cutter a lot of times is the lawful
Mm-hmm.
good
Mm-hmm.
paladin,
Yeah.
like a Dudley Do Right kind of character and that sort of thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
I was just thinking about the Dudley Do the Right type
yeah.
for sure. Okay, so shifting a little bit from
Mhm.
characters, rumor has it we have you to thank for bullywugs.
Yes, that's
Is
true.
that
That
true?
was,
Yeah.
yeah, that's one of the
Okay.
creatures I was pretty excited to make. And again, this is when I was in well, probably middle school,
Okay.
seventh grade, something like that, sixth, seventh grade. And yeah, I would hang out with my dad in his study and after school, and I'd be looking through the what he was writing and creating, and we'd talk. And um, I knew he was creating monsters for
Mm-hmm.
with the Bullywug and the Monster Manual too. I've forgotten, but it was, I think it was either Fiend Folio or Monster Manual 2, one of those.
Okay.
And I just in our backyard we lived in. So I grew up in Lake Geneva at first, and my
Mm-hmm.
parents bought a house in a town called Clinton, which is about 45 minutes away. Very, very small town. We lived in the country near there, but we had 22 acres of land. There
Oh,
was a creek
nice.
that ran through the backyard, a forest. There was a barn, and with limestone, and so lots of adventuring as a kid to go out there and like wander around and let your mind go. So I would see tadpoles and frogs and
Uh-huh.
the water spiders and all that sort of stuff. So I thought, well, why isn't there? We have kobolds. Why wouldn't we have? They're like little dog men back then. They were little dragons.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I thought, why not have frog people, little frog guys that would hop around, and that's. And so I was talking to my dad about it, and we came up with bullywugs as a cute. Oh, I guess it's cute now as an adult, but
They're cute now, yeah.
yeah, they're cute. But those would be like some frog people that jump around and get you. And I thought, they could jump up really high with a spear and stab you and
Mm-hmm.
like impale you. So that'd be neat. So it was just really an awesome time as a kid to hang out and
Yeah.
talk, let your imagination go with your dad, and then write up something that would appear again, not just in your game, but because that became canon for the system, it got into so many people's hands. And I thought it was cool that they were used in the D&D cartoon so much. I was like, oh, wow,
Yeah.
that's really neat.
Yeah. No, and honestly, like I love the backstory behind this because it's so connected towards, you being able to go out and explore and, just being a
Yeah.
kid on the property and going to the creek and everything like that. That I like Bullywugs even more now, quite frankly, not knowing the
Yeah.
backstory for that one. That's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah, it was just a little
Um,
creek, and I'd
oh,
wade through it, and
uh-huh.
it was just fun. It was just fun, and
Yeah.
like there was, in the where there was a lot of burdock. I don't know if people know what burdock is. It's like a bush or a weed
Yep.
that grows up, and it gets these sticky burrs when it dries out,
Yeah,
and
and it's
so it
just
gets
all
their
over the
seeds around.
place.
And,
Yep.
and so I'd cut those down because we had horses, so they would get in the horse's
Oh,
mane.
okay.
So sometimes I'd go out there with a machete and
Yeah.
cut them down. But there was these big, giant, like they're big, black and yellow spiders that were really scary in there too, like cutting down the burdock.
Ooh.
So there's all sorts of great adventure ideas when you're out in the woods and see various funguses and
Uh-huh.
poison ivy and oaks and vines and spiders and insects and all that. That really is good for your. You can take what you see in your daily life, and you can morph that
Right.
into an adventure or into a
Uh-huh.
creature of some kind or an encounter. I still do that today when I'm walking around. Something will, you know, my mind will start imagining. I guess
Mm-hmm.
Walter Mitty, like start imagining a bit of how that could be in an adventure for something. So, uh, I think that's probably a lot of us nerds probably do that.
Yeah, I mean, very much same. Like there'll be something, it's just a little point of inspiration. Suddenly there's this, either it's an NPC or it's a creature or it's just an encounter that's
Yeah.
like, I don't know how I went from, honestly, there was an encounter I had where it was this very pushy woman at a cash register one day, and I just turned her into an NPC who was just bullying everyone around in this one setting that I had. But like this woman became an inspiration for this fictional character, and I will be forever grateful, I guess, is
Yeah.
the best choice of word for that encounter with her. But yeah, little things like that. So it's fun to hear that it's definitely something that you've been doing since you were a kid, literally, and goes on until today. Okay, so talking about, growing up D&D literally with your dad and everything like that. I wanted to chat with you a little bit about Gary Con because this must have been a pretty special one with it being 50 years, the anniversary for D&D. So what was it like pulling the event together, knowing that this was going to be the golden anniversary of D&D?
Oh yeah, we've been thinking about that for a long time, and I was lucky enough to, engage Wizards of the Coast early on and
Hmm.
said they agreed, hey, we want to be there. We think it's a good presence. And as I did, I said, how can you not want to be in the
Right.
birthplace of D&D on, the 50th anniversary? And so they did, and they had a big, press press presence there and several guests. And of course, we have a big organized playroom with a lot of Adventures League. We
Hmm.
held various panels on D&D and D&D across the editions and things of that nature. So, what's the differences? How has it changed? What's play styles that have changed? So all those really fun things that we'd planned on. And then just bigger, we
Yeah.
were, gosh, 3,600 people this year, which, you know, when you think about Gen Con with 70,000, that doesn't feel very big. But remember,
Yeah.
Lake Geneva has 7,000 people in it. So
Yeah.
it's tiny and it's in the middle of nowhere, southeastern Wisconsin. You can fly into Milwaukee or Chicago, which are both about an hour to an hour and
I
a
was gonna
half
say it's a
away.
drive,
So
right? Yeah.
you have to rent a car or
Right.
take an Uber or something. So to have 30, 35, 3,600 people come to Gary Con, what I think what helps make it special is it's focused on tabletop RPGs.
Hmm.
There's some other things that
Hmm.
are going on there, but the focus is gaming. And that's if you come
Right.
there, I want you to play games and have fun. And that's what I put the emphasis on. That's what my dad loved to do. He didn't
Hmm.
love working in a vendor booth or whatever. He wanted to sit down and play games and run games and
Right.
talk to
Yeah.
gamers and have lunch with them or have a beer and hear about their stories and their ideas and what they like to do. So I tried to keep that aspect of it in Gary Con. And all those like-minded people made that much effort to be there.
Hmm.
The camaraderie is very strong. And I think what I've heard people say is uh, there's a vibe there. There's a camaraderie
Hmm.
that when you walk in, you may not know anybody, but within an hour or two, you'll have made contacts and started friendships with people that they see year after year, and oftentimes they'll continue playing games outside of there, whether if they're close by or through
Yeah.
virtual gaming and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, and for instance, this year, since it was the 50th anniversary, I knew GaryCon would sell out, and it did. So I had a second convention the weekend before called Founders and
Hmm.
Legends, which
Hmm.
was really just meant to be a little bit more old school focused and to celebrate because Gary Con's a memorial convention in honor of my dad. However, it's expanded to be a memorial convention that honors the past, founders
Right.
who are no longer here, as well as those who are here now, still
Hmm.
that we get to celebrate, and we extend that a bit more so that a lot of us, as we get older, we've lost some people that have been important to us that we've gamed
Yeah.
with, and those bonds are pretty strong when you've gamed with people over many years. So they get to remember their friends too, which is a great thing.
Hmm.
Um, but at Founders and Legends, I had a special idea for a tournament. I said, well, tournaments, old school tournaments, that's something we don't do a whole lot. I thought I would just have three groups of 8 people go through an adventure that would start you in OD&D, and you would play
Hmm.
4 4-hour segments over 2 days that would take you
Okay.
through OD&D, 1E, 2E, which is kind of AD&D,
Yeah.
third and fourth, and then end in
Uh-huh.
fifth. And it was such a popular idea. I ended up having 5 groups that went through it. So 40 people went through it. And I recruited, oh gosh, I recruited uh, Keith Baker, Zeb Cook, Mike Merles, Kelsey
Hmm.
Dion, and Andrew Perry to develop the storyline. They put in about 1,500 hours
Oh, wow.
into the design. Oh yeah, it was. I thought, well, it can't be that hard. No, it was. They put in about 50 because they put it. I hired them, and then they we had about another 5 people. So collectively, there was about 1,500 hours of work that went into designing this tournament, and it was absolutely amazing. So it was called the Incarnate Tournament, and
Hmm.
I'm going to take that as a so yes, if you follow me on social medias or Gary Con or Gaxx Worx, any of those, we'll be talking about it. And if you've attended and you're on my mailing list, I'll
Hmm.
I'll email that. But I'm going to take it as a road show,
Oh,
probably
fun.
to Seattle, Vegas, and Atlanta, so that other people can experience it. And I'm already working on next year. So if you play
Hmm.
this and you'll have an opportunity to continue, and we'll even probably have all the first, all the groups that came in first, maybe go to a
Okay.
special one and see who's the best of the best for season 2. So we'll see if that'll work out. But everybody who played had an amazing time. I shouldn't say that. One guy out of 40 on the questionnaire, on the survey, was like, "This is terrible."
Oh no.
Okay. Yeah, he's like, "I hated this whole thing." I was like, "Okay, sorry." But everybody else like
Hmm.
was overwhelmingly, "Hey, when can we do this again?" We're there. So that idea was really cool, and it just came to me from, I was like, D&D has changed a lot
Yeah, it
over the
has.
year. What would it be
Yeah.
like to play it, the same group with the same characters in the same scenario, but you morph your character through each one, and how that would really test your skill
Yeah.
as a player, right? Because you have to know enough about each part of the rules to be able to know how to adjust your style and still make it through successfully and get all those right.
Yeah.
So that was so much fun, and I couldn't have asked for better people to help me design it.
Hmm.
Just
Hmm.
incredible, and DM it. They designed it, and those are my DMs, right?
Oh,
So
okay.
so
Oh,
you got to
awesome.
play with Merles or Baker or
Right.
Kelsey, uh,
Right.
and you switched. So you played just one
Oh,
session
so
with
you
you.
even cycled the
So
DMs.
you cycled through, and it was and you got scored on how your group did as you went through, and then there was a winner. And those groups, especially the winning group, was Group C.
Hmm.
They're now Team Jokel, which has meaning if you played, but I'm not going to
Okay.
reveal much about it. But
Fair.
um, they they became fast friends. They didn't, I think there was a married couple, but other than that, nobody knew each other,
Hmm.
and they now are like fast friends, and they're coming in, they're playing next year as a team. It's like they are 100% in. They were like, peas and carrots. They were like, everybody had gelled as friends
Hmm.
in that couple day experience. So it's amazing what gaming does. So I'm way off. I don't even
Oh,
remember
yeah.
what you asked me, but I'm just rambling
It,
now.
it's totally cool because honestly, I love stuff like that because I've done stuff D&D the Castle where it's very
Yeah.
confined periods of time where you're
Yep.
playing together, but seeing the players mesh and gel and get their style together and their tactics together, it's fascinating to watch unfold in front of you as the DM. But the fact you're then adding in the shifting of the DMs, the shifting of which type of D&D, and then
Yep.
having to adjust your own characters, like that is absolutely fascinating.
Yeah. And you get your
Seriously.
character, you don't know what you're playing until
Oh,
you
you
arrive
don't.
the evening before. You don't know what you're playing. You draw at random your character, and that is also the group you're in. Is like you're gonna, okay, 8, boom,
Stop.
now you're the character. And we decided you can horse trade inside the group because we don't want people to be
Okay.
unhappy if oh, I don't want to be a fighter or fighting man. I want to be
Uh-huh.
the
Uh-huh.
whatever, the halfling. Okay, great. So you can swap it around. And then you play in the morning of day one, you get your character at the end of that session for the next one. And then at the end of that second session, which will be evening, you'll get your character for the following day. So that's all you've got, is that much time to study your character and be ready to go. So this is a test of your abilities to play D&D and to succeed, and of course to come together as a team, right? So
Right.
it was great though. I mean, it was amazing, and oh my god, we play tested it. Turns out
Mm-hmm.
we're all terrible gamers because these guys crushed. They crushed it.
Oh,
They did
wow.
stuff. You know how gamers are. Because we're
Oh,
like, oh, I
absolutely.
don't know.
Yeah.
I think we might get TPKs on all, and they're like, no. There
No.
was like a couple. There was a couple, rough spots for people, but
Uh-huh.
um, for the most part, everybody did, came up with inventive ways, and as your players always do, right? You're like, oh,
Yeah.
I really got them. Oh wow, I didn't think I forgot about. Well,
It's
I didn't
just
cross
it.
my mind to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. When they come up with those ideas, you're like, okay, that was completely out of left field, but I'm here for it because
Yep.
sometimes they almost come up with a better scenario than you ever thought of.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
okay, well, they might do this, they might do that. Where did that one come from? But okay. I
Yeah,
love
and
those
it's
moments.
it's
Those are
great, and
like some of the best. Yeah,
they use inventive spells like, oh, there's two of them. I'm
exactly.
going to charm that one and have it attack this
Yep.
one, or what? And you're like, oh, that totally works, and then I can run
Yep.
past this thing. And you're right, yeah, this is just to waste your time and beat you up. So yeah, when you do that, that's
Hmm.
great, and you're now getting there with less time and receiving less damage, and no
Hmm.
characters imperiled and that sort of stuff. So
Yeah.
all the better.
Yeah, no, it's always great when you can see the players latch on to the concept and
Yep.
make it even something more than ever anticipated. I mean,
Yep.
that's to me, that's like one of the biggest thrills running a game is seeing how it becomes an even bigger, better concept than you could ever imagine,
Yeah.
which is fantastic. So,
Yeah.
really quick, while
Mhm.
Luke and I are still going to keep chatting, heads up, we're going to start our giveaway. So Gabe has it all set and ready to go. Watch the chat for info on how to get involved in that one and enter to win. Again, it's going to be those 42 chests like we do every single week. So that is happening right now. I just saw the command go up in chat. So take advantage of that. So Luke, going back to
Mhm.
the whole Gary Con and Founders and Legends and everything like
Yeah.
that, how did this all basically get started? Like, how did Gary Con come to be? What was the
Oh
inspo
yeah.
for that?
Sure. So yeah, GaryCon came out of a very sad event. March 4th of 2008, my father passed away, and I really didn't have an understanding of how important Dungeons and Dragons and his role was as the creator, co-creator of Dungeons and Dragons, how important he was to people. People who had never met him, would write us, and people would call me. I was in recruiting command at the
Hmm.
time in the army, and so
Oh
people would look
wow.
up my number and call me, and they're
Hmm.
like, "Oh, I didn't expect you to answer, but I'm Colonel so and so, and Dungeons and Dragons was formative to who I am, and yeah, I just want to pass on my condolences that your father is gone."
Hmm.
But so thousands of people reached out to us through various means, and some said, "Oh, uh, we're going to make a pilgrimage to Lake Geneva," and I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, we're having a small private funeral, so that doesn't really make sense and you can't really invite people
Yeah.
to something like that.
No.
But, uh, but if they're going to drive from the East Coast or wherever, you know, I don't, I would like to be able to say thanks or welcome them in some
Hmm.
way. And so I rented the American Legion Hall, which was a site of small conventions from when I was a kid. Autumn Revel or Spring
Yeah.
Revel. How was it? Oh, I've forgotten the names. Winter Fantasy, Spring Revel, and I can't remember the name. But anyway, so there's lots of small conventions as
Okay.
a kid, and I had fond memories. It could hold maybe
Yeah.
150, 200 people, right?
Okay.
And so my brothers and sisters made your dishes to pass. There was there's a bar in the American Legion Hall, and we set up a screen and we played Dungeons and Dragons cartoons and the Futurama episode that my dad was on, and set up a podium so people could share
Hmm.
their favorite story of my dad, and we all played games, which is what my dad liked to do, is hang out and play games. And it was just a really appropriate way to celebrate his life. And I think it was Harold Johnson, who's a former TSR employee, and I think he wrote the Shrine of the Tuakoa, something like that. He's an old TSR employee and
Yeah.
designer. Said, "Hey, this is a really great time, Luke. You should do it again." And Jolly Blackburn, who writes Knights of the Dinner Table comic book, was there, and he said, "Yeah, you can call it Gary Con because they have a character in their world called Gary Jackson, who's a mix of Steve Jackson and my dad, Gary Gygax,
Hmm.
and who runs Hard Eight Games, which is their TSR, right?" So I said, "Okay, sure." I didn't know that at the time. I just said, "Yeah, Gary Con, it's a great name." And
Yeah.
so the next year, I thought I would just hold a game day and invite
Hmm.
people. I didn't charge any money, and I just rented the same place. And I figured I'd spend a few $1,000s, and we'd get together and play games. And I didn't know if 50 people would show up or what, but about 178, I think, people showed up, and lots, the Kenzer people brought books and things, so that they said, "Hey, have people give you donations, then give them these books," and because they like, you can't just pay for this. And in the middle of the day, or about 5 p.m. actually, they stopped and said, "Hey, let's hold an impromptu auction to raise money to help offset costs." So they
Hmm.
did that, and I ended up with $400 more than I'd spent, and I couldn't keep that because I thought that was very
Right.
inappropriate. So I said, "Okay, I will start a business and make this for next year." And so I did. And I made it bigger, and it was 240 people and 300, and where it was 240,
Hmm.
400, 500, 600, etc. It grew and grew and grew, and we're now in the biggest space in Lake Geneva, which is the Grand Geneva Resort, which
Ooh.
was formerly the Playboy Club in the 70s
Oh,
and
that's
early 80s.
right.
Yep.
That's
And
right.
the site of Gen Con 10. So it has a tie-in
Has some
to,
history.
yep, it says a tie-in there. And it's a nice place. So it's different than going to a lot of venues for tend to be like a concrete amphitheater kind of thing.
Right.
So this is not. This is a resort. It's nice. It's very comfortable. We have um, instead of having to go to a concession stand, you can. We still have grab and goes, but we have their banquet staff will come by and take your orders at the table and bring you food
Oh,
and drink at the
nice.
table. So you could pack your gaming schedule and not have to worry about taking meal breaks because you can get food and drink right there. And like I said, it's very, very comfortable and beautiful surroundings. So, and it's all taken over 100% by gamers. We fill every space. We fill their ski lodge. We fill their second hotel
Amazing.
that's out there. So it's all nerds everywhere, and it's just a wonderful 5 days. It's 4 days, but really on Wednesday,
You have
everyone
like,
comes
yeah.
in. I throw a
Yeah.
I throw a pre party with free beer and pizza for
Oh,
everybody
fun.
who's there, and then we have happy hours on Friday and Saturday where if you buy our little stadium cup, there's free spotted
Hmm.
cow, and there's all sorts of cool traditions. There's the Hawaiian shirt picture where we all wear our Hawaiian shirts on Saturday and get the lobby, and there's hundreds of us. We take a picture because my dad used to be known for wearing Hawaiian shirts.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's just lots of little traditions and nice little vendor hall, and it's really a wonderful time. And uh, gosh, obviously I'm a little biased, but I would say if you look for reviews of GaryCon or talk to people who've been there, I think it is probably just about everyone who's attended their favorite convention, and rarely do people not want to come back. I'm sure there's someone, I'm sure there's it's not everybody has different tastes, but by and
Right.
large, it's really a very wonderful experience. I'm so proud. Oh, in fact, my
Yes.
dad my dad believed in if you were fortunate enough to have some money and be able to help others, that you should. And so we have a charity auction each year that came out of the auction, the spirit of the auction that raised money for the convention. Well, now we're able to cover our bills, so I don't need that. But
Hmm.
um, last year we partner with it's an extra life organization that's the Children's Wisconsin Foundation. So they run the Children's
Okay.
Hospital in Wisconsin. So last year we raised $52,000 in a 3 hour auction. And I didn't think, I was like, man, are we going to be able to beat it for this year? This year we raised $55,545.73 for Children's Wisconsin Foundation. So the generosity of the people who are there is amazing. That's over $15 per person who attended GaryCon. That's gamers are good people, and the spirit of
Yeah.
generosity is truly amazing. So really, really proud to be able to help be part of GaryCon and be able to organize that event. So um, anyway, it's a great
No,
event. You
no,
should come.
that's fantastic. Yeah, definitely keep your eyes out for next year because it sounds like it's a fantastic event. Market calendars and all that good stuff. Before we start running out of time, believe it or
Yeah.
not, because we're kind of getting to that window, I
Wow.
want to make sure we have a chance to answer some questions from
Mm-hmm.
chat. So chat, if you want to try and get your question in, remember it is question colon all in caps, and Gabe will pull it from the chat and pop it into this handy dandy document I have over here. But I'm going to start off with a question from the lurking writer. Question: how long has GaryCon been running for now? And what parts of it across the years have or do mean the most to you? This is actually quite appropriate considering our
Yeah.
conversation that we've just been having.
Yeah, absolutely. So my dad passed away in 2008. So GaryCon 0 would have been in 2008. So 2009 is when GaryCon started. So we just held GaryCon 16 this March, and it's held March every year because it's a memorial convention of that event.
Mhm.
And so the most important parts for me, well, there's a couple things that have become tradition. So one of them is the Gary Gygax Lifetime Achievement Award. So we started that at GaryCon 8. And the first recipient was James Ward. We've had it's gone to such people as Margaret Weiss and Larry
Mhm.
Elmore, Jeff Easley, and this last year was Mike Pondsmith was the awardee. So that's pretty cool. It's just a really wonderful way to recognize some folks because there's so many of their peers there. I think we have about 100 guests and industry notables who are there, ranging from, you know, let's see, we had Tim Kask. Tim Kask always comes, so Tim Kask
Mhm.
all the way to, a Mike Merles, or, and pretty much everybody in between. So lots and lots of game designers and artists. Larry Elmore, Larry Elmore is there. Errol Otis did the art for this year, and also
Nice.
the art that we put on the limited
Ooh.
edition, cool, super cool shoe that we did. So
Yeah.
that was the art. So that's an Errol Otis shoe that we have for sale on the Gaxx Worx website.
Which I believe that link has been floating around
Oh,
in the chat if you've been paying
yep.
attention. So if you want
Oh,
to
yeah.
check out the shoes.
So you get it red with the dragon on there, obviously, or the Errol Otis version. And I knew that was a good idea. I introduced him last year in November for kind of
Hmm.
Christmas. And guess what? Wizards announced at my convention
Yeah, yeah.
that Converse was doing fantasy
Yeah.
shoes in partnership with them. I was like, well, I guess that's business.
There you
They'll
go.
if you take
Yeah.
a good idea, steal it while you steal it and do it. But if you wanted a pair of the original fantasy shoes, well,
There you go.
you can get yourself a pair. So yeah, that being able to award that is really cool. We do, like I said, we have the Hawaiian shirt picture. So my dad was known for wearing Hawaiian shirts. He actually thought they were really tacky and didn't like them at all, and he only wore them as a joke because my oldest sister, Elisa, moved to Hawaii. She got married and moved to Hawaii.
Uh-huh.
Her husband, her loved Hawaii. And so on my dad's birthday, she would send him Hawaiian shirts and say, you have to wear them because it's a birthday gift. So he would put them
Right.
on as a good sport, right? And wear the Hawaiian shirt, although he didn't really care for them. But what a great way to stand out in a crowd in a
Aw.
gaming convention. So no one
Right.
knows that backstory, right? Or very few people do. And they just thought, oh, Gary liked Hawaiian shirts. Well, no, it just helped him be identified in a crowd. He actually thought they were kind of loud and tacky and terrible. Um,
Uh-huh.
yeah, so we all put on our Hawaiian shirts and we do that. So and that's a lot of fun. I think my dad would think that was great that people were all wearing loud tacky shirts in his honor. So that'd be great because he liked to make jokes and loved puns and just kind of being silly. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that's a great homage to him. And then of course the other thing is the charity auction. It's amazing. We've raised, gosh, I probably $200,000 over the years, $200,000 plus for various charitable endeavors. We used to help out, like, it kind of shifted from Gary Kahn needing it to helping out people
Mm-hmm.
like Laura Rosloff, when Jim Rosloff, who was an early art director for TSR, when he passed, they had some
Mm-hmm.
expenses that they needed.
Mm-hmm.
Jim Ward was sick for a lot of years and had a lot of medical bills, so we helped him out for a year
Right.
or two. And then we shifted to finding charitable organizations that were helping oftentimes youth groups, because youth and because I was in the Army for 33 years, we also helped out Wounded Warrior a couple of times. But
Gotcha.
I think
Yeah.
we've really made a nice partnership with Children's Wisconsin, and I think we've 3 out of the last 4 years we've gone with Children's Wisconsin and really just been able to raise an incredible amount to help them heal sick kids and also at-risk youth and the betterment of the children in Wisconsin. So really proud that's something that just makes me feel really good to be able to channel the goodwill of so many
Mm-hmm.
gamers and point it in a positive direction. So and for me personally, running GaryCon, it's a ton of work. It's really
I'm sure.
by the way, sure, I'm the head of GaryCon. It is work of so many people year round who either give us stuff or volunteer their time, art, or but certainly there's a staff in there who's receiving and planning all the events and editing year round.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not a one-man show. I absolutely couldn't do it by myself. But the joy I personally get out of it is seeing all the happy faces around the gaming table and having reconnected with so many folks who knew my dad and hearing stories I had no idea of what he had done or what he meant to other people and how he helped so many creative people and how he gave a lot of his time. If somebody emailed him or handed him something, he would
Mm-hmm.
actually read it and respond. I mean, just a quick story. I mentioned uh, Jolly Blackburn before.
Yeah.
He gave my dad a copy of his magazine Shaddus in like
Mm-hmm.
1992. He was still in the Army, I think. He was just getting out, and he did this little magazine. And the strip Knights of the Dinner Table is actually just a filler that he made to fill out a page. He's like, oh man, I need to make some. So that's how. But then it became its own thing. But he
Uh-huh.
gave a copy to my dad and said, could you read this? He's like, yeah, sure, of course. So a week or two goes by and the phone rang, and I think his wife picked it up and is like, "Hey, Jolly, Gary Gygax is on the phone for you." And he's like, "Yeah, sure." And he's like, "All right, who is this?" And he's like, "Hey, it's Gary. I just read your status and I wanted to point out a few things where I, maybe give you some tips." And he was just like blown away that my dad read it and then
Uh-huh.
actually called him and gave him feedback as he went through on how to make it better. And he did this for so many people. And uh, I mean, gosh, another guy who volunteers at Gary Con has for a number of years. He was 13 and he was standing in line to get a signature from my dad, and he had I think his parents were going through a divorce or whatever. He was feeling very troubled at that time, right? It must have
Mm-hmm.
been obvious to my dad because he said,
Yeah.
"Hey, young man, do you have a few minutes? Can you just, he signed his book. He's like, come sit next to me here." And so in between signings, he'd chat with him a little bit. And he's
Mm-hmm.
like, "Hey, okay, great. You know what? If you give me your address, I'll send you a nice care package or whatever." So he sent them a care package of books and they corresponded a few times back and forth. And this person said that was so impactful to him and it helped him through a very rough period, and that people cared, that my dad showed that, to him. He comes and volunteers and does a lot of work at a lot of conventions, but certainly at GaryCon too. And that's why gaming was so important to him. And there's that story, whether it was my dad
Yeah.
personally through an email or just the game itself, that has transformed so many lives. Which leads me to another thing: is what am I doing for the 50th anniversary?
Yeah.
I've heard so many of these stories and they're so impactful. I've seen a theme. I wanted to get a collection
Mm-hmm.
of essays from people who you might know or who are in the business, anywhere from, oh gosh, I think we've got Jim Butcher has agreed, Joe Manganiello, but like, Joe Goodman, Steve
Mm-hmm.
Chenault, you know Errol Otis, all these folks. What you know what does D&D mean to them? How did D&D, playing D&D, transform their lives? And so I'm calling that, 50 years of adventure, the transformative power of Dungeons and Dragons. And there'll be 50 essays from notable people in there. And some of them are great. I mean, gosh, I've gotten David Weber, who's a science fiction writer that I know, he did submitted his. Dakota Kraut, who writes lit RPG.
Mm-hmm.
There's just so many great people, and it's impacted so many folks. And just, gosh, the guy who designed, the lead creative guy for Blizzard, who did, World of Warcraft, Chris Metzen, is a huge gamer, obviously, right?
Yeah.
There's just so many folks from different walks of life. I mean, I've met. I'm just saying this for instance. I mean, they're just people, and but they're gamers, just like you and I.
Right.
So people that you might not think about, like Vince Vaughn comes to GaryCon. Why? He's not a guest. I don't pay him. I don't do anything. He comes because he wants to play D&D and he has a good
Yeah.
time. As
Yeah.
well as, Dan Weiss, who wrote, the game showrunner for Game of Thrones. They come there
Mm-hmm.
because they can be nerds and just
Right.
game, right?
Yeah.
And that's the kind of community that we have. It's like, hey man, I mean, I'm sure there's, famous researchers and, whatever, or just regular guys, like me, who come there and we all get to sit around a table and have a good time together and create these amazing adventures that entertain us and tell us a lot about ourselves, I think. So,
Yeah. And I mean that sums up D&D, doesn't it? Like it's just people coming to a table, getting to geek out, have fun, build a story together, and create some fantastic memories. And believe it or not, we're actually getting to wrap up time.
what?
I
Already?
know that time flies by every single time. But I gotta tell you, I have adored all these little bits of memories and little behind the scenes stories that you shared with us today. Before we wrap this up, though, Luke, do
Mhm.
you want to share any additional information or other projects that you want people to keep an eye out for?
Oh, yeah.
Because you have a lot going on.
I do. There's a million things going on. So the 50 years of adventure book,
Hmm.
sign up for that for notification when we launch the Kickstarter. I just wrapped up a collaboration I had with GUI Cube called The Tomb of Gygax, which is an homage, sort of a lighthearted lampoony homage to my dad. Obviously, it's a little bit based on my first adventures in the
Hmm.
village of Hamlet. That's what we picked because that was the first time I played D&D. And so that's the Tomb of Gygax. The Kickstarter is closed, but backer kit will be opening shortly. So if you're interested in that, keep your eyes open. And of course, follow me on Gaxx Worx, and I will in my social media so I can tell you about my
Nice.
Kickstarters for my World of Okrim. I'm going to have a setting book coming out for that. I'm going to have a fiction
Nice.
novel out this year based in Oakrim. I have a historical fiction book on the history of my family name that's coming out. I have a leadership book that's in the works. Hopefully, it'll be out early next year on the impact of D&D and role-playing games on my life, and I think others as well,
Hmm.
because a lot of us have ended up in prominent positions and have sharpened their skills as children and young adults that help them succeed in life. So I have a just a myriad of stuff and some modules and other cool stuff that's coming out, um, and cool shoes that I showed you. So make sure you
Very
get
cool
some of those.
shoes.
Yeah, and I'll be at UK Games Expo, Origins, Gen Con, Dragon Con, and Luca for sure.
Fantastic. All right. Well, first of all, I want to make sure before we go to thank both Lauren for producing the show and Gabe for pulling those questions. And definitely, Luke, thank you so much for sitting here and chatting with us for this past hour. It has been absolutely wonderful and great to chat with you. For those of you hanging out in the chat, we will have developer insights coming up right after this. So you can, stick around on Twitch and jump back into the next show, which will be starting up at the top of the hour. Trevor will be back next week with a special guest. I promise you'll see me on the usual paint and slate tomorrow instead. Okay.
Well, I'm glad I got to
So
talk to you.
I am very glad we got to do this. This was wonderful. And, for those of you whose questions we didn't get a chance to get to, thank you so much for that. But obviously, time is fleeting and flew by us without us even
Yeah.
realizing it. So, anyways, take care, everyone, and we will chat another time, hopefully. Take care. Bye.